Outside, the bells farewelling Pope Francis still ring in the air, but within the centuries-old walls of the Vatican, a decision as contentious as it is momentous is unfolding. The name that will soon be pronounced will not only mark the new leader of the Church, but could determine the course of global faith for decades to come. In the heart of Rome, beneath the majestic marble columns and golden mosaics of the Vatican, a silent but undeniable tension permeates the air. At first glance, everything seems calm. Tourists take pictures in front of St. Peter's Basilica. Prayers from centuries past still whisper through the halls. However, behind this apparent serenity lies a profound transition, one that could redefine the spiritual leadership of more than 13 million Catholics worldwide. Pope Francis, considered by many to be the most influential reformer in recent papal history, leaves a mark characterized by his courage, tenderness, and also controversy. His pontificate was marked by opening doors that had long remained closed within the Church. Now, as its final chapter comes to a close, all eyes turn to the ancient and secretive rite that will decide who will walk in his footsteps. The great unknown prevails. Who will be the next to wear the fisherman's ring? The answer lies in the hands of the College of Cardinals, that group of high prelates whom some call the princes of the Church. Coming from all corners of the world, these leaders will meet beneath the frescoes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. But this will not be a common vote. It is a moment of spiritual discernment, a serene encounter between contrasting visions of the future of the Church. It's not just about theology. Global culture, church politics, and the changing needs of the faithful on every continent are at stake. Tonight, we turn our attention to 10 prominent cardinals who might be called to guide the Catholic Church into a new phase. Each, shaped by the customs and challenges of their homeland, brings a unique voice and vision that could shape the path of the Church for years to come. Let's start with number 10. Number 10, Cardinal Wim Eijck, known to many as the Doctor of Doctrine. In 10th place on this list is Cardinal Wim Eijck, a figure who stands out for his steadfast serenity and theological clarity that leaves no room for doubt. At 71, he is Archbishop of Utrecht, and before embracing his priestly vocation, he trained as a doctor, dedicating the first years of his professional life to caring for the human body. Over time, he felt a deeper calling to heal the moral and spiritual wounds of a disoriented modern society. Today, that same clinical precision is reflected in his theological thinking. Cardinal Eijck is known for his unwavering adherence to the Church's teachings and has not hesitated to speak out against what he considers worrying ambiguities in matters such as marriage, the Eucharist, and moral doctrine. On more than one occasion, he has expressed disagreement with some of Pope Francis's more open-minded initiatives, clearly siding with the more conservative sector of the clergy. His followers consider him a true healer of the soul, meticulous, steadfast, and essential in uncertain times. On the contrary, his detractors argue that his attachment to tradition could hinder his ability to lead the Church amid current challenges. Imagine for a moment a Dutch pope, once a doctor, now a pastor, guiding with firm hands the frayed threads of tradition. Could his doctrinal fidelity become a bridge to unity, or rather accentuate internal fractures? Perhaps the next conclave will shed light on this mystery. Number 9, Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Bisungu, the voice of Africa. In 9th place is Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Bisungu, whose figure resonates strongly in the beating heart of a continent brimming with faith. At 65, he is the Archbishop of Kinshasa and one of the most representative faces of an African church in full ferment and growth. In a region where Catholicism is experiencing unprecedented expansion, his voice transcends the boundaries of his archdiocese. Recognized for his imposing presence and staunch defense of traditional principles, many call him the Lion of Africa. When intense debates arose within the Church over the blessing of same-sex unions, Ambongo took a clear and unequivocal stance, reaffirming the intrinsic dignity of every person while maintaining that the Church's fundamental doctrines cannot be molded by current cultural trends. His firmness resonated in numerous dioceses across the continent, consolidating his image as a courageous leader, willing to stand up for the truth, even in the midst of global controversies. The possibility of an African pope, something unprecedented in the history of the Church, seems closer today than ever. As the axis of Catholic influence shifts south, many see Ambongo not only as a guardian of the faith, but also as a reflection of the future of the Church. However, his strong opposition to certain progressive reforms could cause deep tensions among the cardinal electors. Is the world ready to see Peter's successor represented as a lion from Africa? Only time will tell. Number 8, Cardinal Raymond Burke, the unwavering traditionalist. In 8th place is perhaps the most controversial figure on this list, Cardinal Raymond Burke, a 76-year-old American prelate originally from Wisconsin. He is known for his solemn bearing and firm adherence to the traditional customs of Catholicism. Over the years, Burke has become a symbol of resistance to new interpretations of church doctrine. He has openly criticized several of the proposals promoted by Pope Francis, from his fervent defense of the Latin Mass to his questioning of the theological foundations of certain pastoral changes, and he has not hesitated to express his disagreement. His followers consider him a courageous defender of eternal truths, a spiritual soldier dressed in purple. His detractors, however, see him as an example of a rigidity that the Church is trying to overcome. The idea of an American pope has not yet been explored by the Church. If Burke were to become papal president, it would entail not only a change of nationality, but also a profound transformation in the tone and style of leadership. However, many believe his clear and firm vision of Catholic identity could resonate with cardinals who are weary of a lack of doctrinal clarity. Will this traditionalist make the move from the periphery to the center to guide the faithful? Number 7, Cardinal Peter Erdo, the silent strategist. In 7th place is Cardinal Peter Erdo, 72-year-old Archbishop of Esztergom, Budapest. Reserved and of profound intellect, Erdo has maintained a low international profile, although his influence in the European theological sphere is notable. With training in civil and canon law, he represents a model of ecclesial leadership based on structure, tradition, and intellectual rigor. Although he rarely seeks the limelight, when he speaks publicly, he does so to reaffirm the Church's fundamental principles on issues such as marriage, immigration, and doctrine. He has expressed concern that the Church may be leaning too heavily toward compassion at the expense of doctrinal clarity. He conceives of the Church more as a solid bastion than a field hospital. His measured tone could appeal to cardinals yearning for stability amid the current changes. The possibility of a Hungarian pope may seem remote, but Erdo's prudence and ability to unite the most conservative sectors could make him an unexpected choice. Sometimes it is not the one who raises his voice the loudest who wins favor, but the one who offers the greatest strength. Will this disciplined strategist succeed in attracting voter support, or will he remain a central figure in the spotlight? Number 6, Cardinal Mario Grech, the forward-thinking reformer. At 67 years old, this Maltese church leader, despite coming from one of the smallest nations in Europe, has had a remarkable impact on the universal church. He currently serves as Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops, leading one of the most ambitious projects promoted by Pope Francis, the World Synod on Synodality. This initiative, which promotes open dialogue between bishops, clergy, and laity, seeks to rethink the way the Church exercises its leadership and relates to its faithful. This is a bold effort that aims for a closer, more welcoming, and compassionate Church. Cardinal Gretsch has guided this process with serenity and firm trust in the guidance of the Holy Spirit. His supporters consider him a bridge between cultures, a man capable of uniting voices from different corners of the world. His desire is for a Church that listens more than it speaks, that walks alongside the people instead of imposing from on high. However, this view also raises concerns. His progressive stance has raised concerns among those who fear that doctrinal principles will be sacrificed in the name of broader inclusion. Imagine then a Maltese pope from a humble island, taking over the leadership of the largest religious institution in the world. Will Cardinal Gretsch's calm fortitude be enough to lead the Church amid the challenges of reform? Or will his ideas end up accentuating divisions among believers? These are the questions now facing cardinals as they consider whether the synodal model will be the compass for the future of the Church. And number 5, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, the peacemaker at the center of attention. In 5th place is Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, the 69-year-old Archbishop of Bologna, affectionately known to many as the Peacemaker. His career has leaned more toward diplomacy than strict doctrine. He has been a key figure in peace processes in countries torn apart by violence, and for years has embodied the vision of the Church promoted by Pope Francis, a Church rooted in mercy, humility, and encounter. He is a tireless advocate for an ecclesial community that reaches out to the forgotten, cares for the poor, and reflects the compassionate heart of Christ in the midst of a wounded world. His leadership style is pastoral, serene, and welcoming. Listen before you speak, hug before you judge. For many, he represents the model of what the next pope could be. And for some, he should be approachable, humane, deeply committed to reconciliation. Now imagine this scene. Cardinal Zuppi, appearing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, delivered a message of hope to a fractured humanity. His election would symbolize a Church moving further toward its mission of comfort and healing. However, not everyone would see it favorably. There are those who fear that his tenderness lacks the necessary strength to confront the current threats to faith and unity. Could such a conciliatory leader act decisively and clearly when difficult decisions need to be made? His affable style would support the immense weight of the pontificate. That is the question that is presented to the conclave. The Church now needs a pastor who can heal or a helmsman who can weather the storm. Number 4, Cardinal Robert Sarah, the steadfast guardian of sacred tradition. In 4th place is a man whose life reflects deep conviction and spiritual strength. Cardinal Robert Sarah, 78, originally from Guinea, is recognized worldwide for his unwavering fidelity to the Church's most sacred tradition. Raised in an African village without electricity or modern amenities, his path to the Vatican has not only been long in distance, but also deeply marked by faith and perseverance. Since his youth, Sarah has shown a deep reverence for the sacred, remaining steadfast in his defense of what he considers the authentic core of Catholic identity. He is respected for his contemplative nature and his keen lucidity. His most widely read books, focusing on silence, interiority, and fidelity to God's eternal truths, have moved thousands of people around the world. In a time saturated with constant stimuli, his call for contemplation and stillness resonates strongly, especially among those seeking spiritual grounding. His vision of the Church rests on lasting foundations. A staunch defender of the Latin Mass and traditional liturgical practices, he clearly advocates moral rectitude. He has not hesitated to express concern about the concessions that In his opinion, the church is made to the secular world on issues such as family, sexuality, and doctrine. In 2019, he forcefully warned that Western society was heading towards spiritual decline and called on the church not to follow the same path. Now imagine an African pope not modeled after the times of the Reformation, but as a jealous guardian of the sacred. If elected, Cardinal Sarah would likely restore ancient rites, reaffirm the teachings of the Church without compromise, and encourage the faithful to a life of prayer, reverence, and sacrifice. For many, he is a prophetic voice in uncertain times, but there are also those who see in his vision a break from the more open and pastoral approach that has gained ground in recent years. The dilemma facing the College of Cardinals is evident. Electing Cardinal Sarah would either firmly anchor the Church in its heritage or risk alienating those seeking renewal based on dialogue and acceptance. Although he is approaching 80 years of age and his health requires consideration, his name resonates loudly in the Vatican corridors. Some point to his age as a disadvantage for a position that demands energy, constant travel, and great stamina. But his defenders look beyond the physical. They see in him a spiritual depth forged in trial and dedication, a rare wisdom that transcends the measures of the world. For his followers, Cardinal Sarah is not simply a candidate. He is a prophetic presence, a steady flame in the midst of darkness. Some compare him to a contemporary Moses or a wise old man chosen not for his credentials, but for his spiritual power. They imagine a conclave moved by his name, Sarah, rising vote after vote like a sudden storm that dispels confusion and calls the church to rediscover its sacred roots. An African bishop once said of him, "He is our Augustine, brilliant, courageous, and grounded in truth." That comparison is no small feat like St. Augustine. Sarah combines intellectual depth with firm principles. But it is precisely this strength of character that can pose a challenge in a church increasingly oriented toward flexibility and inclusion. Will a leader who refuses to compromise be embraced or overlooked? That is the central question of the upcoming papal conclave. Number 3, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, the Heart of Asia. In third place is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a figure who has left a profound mark not only in his homeland, the Philippines, but throughout the international Catholic community. At 66, he embodies a renewed and tender way of understanding ecclesial leadership. Vital, approachable with a special sensitivity, and willing to lead with authenticity and compassion. He is often called the Asian Francis, as his human warmth, closeness, and theological openness evoke the legacy of Pope Francis. Raised in Manila in a simple environment, he has always remained connected to the everyday lives of ordinary people. He is known for cycling through the city's busy streets to reach the poorest neighborhoods, not out of protocol, but out of a sincere sense of brotherhood. A highly respected theologian, he combines profound intellectual ability with a moving authenticity. His homilies are impactful not only by their content, but also by the emotion they evoke, often bringing both him and his listeners to tears. His ability to reach the hearts of people from all backgrounds is one of the most distinctive features of his pastoral service. He currently serves as prefect of the dicastery for evangelization, enthusiastically leading the Church's mission to proclaim the gospel to every corner of the world. His voice conveys the joy of good news. His presence reflects the compassion of Christ, and his vision is that of a church that welcomes rather than excludes. He advocates for a more inclusive pastoral care, especially toward those who feel marginalized or forgotten, stating simply that God's love excludes no one. For many, these words capture the essence of the Christian message. However, for some, they generate concern, fearing that emotion could displace doctrinal clarity. Let's imagine the scene. The bells of St. Peter's ringing, an expectant crowd gathered in the square, and an Asian pope, the first in history, emerging onto the balcony. With tears streaming down his face and a voice full of hope, he addresses a church thirsting for renewal. It would be a shift not only geographical, but deeply symbolic. The spiritual heart of Catholicism extending beyond Europe to new lands where the faith is growing strong. However, Tegel's opening is not without challenges. Some fear that his empathy will be interpreted as weakness, that his tenderness will not be able to withstand the harsh demands of the Vatican leadership. The Curia, with its many complexities and political implications, is not easy terrain to navigate. A cardinal once remarked, "He is the future." If he manages to survive the present, whether Cardinal Tegel will fully ascend or be held back by the institutional structure remains one of the most captivating questions surrounding the upcoming conclave. Number 2 is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's most prominent diplomat and a pillar of stability in turbulent times. Although his name may not inspire enthusiasm among the general public, he enjoys the highest respect within the walls of the Holy See. At 70, Parolin holds the position of Secretary of State and is seen as the Church's most experienced political navigator. For years, he has accompanied Pope Francis' international vision, offering not only experience but also calm guidance amid global tensions. If the Church were a ship facing storms, Parolin would be the one calmly plotting the course with map in hand. Known by many as the great connoisseur of the Vatican corridors, he is distinguished by his reserved nature, his prudence in decision-making, and his silent firmness. Cardinal Pietro Parolin has been an integral part of the Vatican's diplomatic corps for decades, forging relationships with allies and navigating complex dialogues with challenging interlocutors. He played a crucial role in the re-establishment of diplomatic relations with Cuba and in negotiating the controversial agreement with China, which aimed to maintain religious dialogue in a challenging political environment. His supporters view him as uniquely equipped to manage the Church's intricate international affairs, especially at a time when the Vatican faces constant scrutiny from governments, international organizations, and the media. Parolin embodies stability, predictability, and refined political judgment. Although he rarely seeks the limelight, his influence is felt in every significant diplomatic decision. A pontificate under his leadership would likely not be characterized by radical reforms or fiery speeches, but rather by strategic management, careful balancing, and continuity of the Church's role on the global stage. His election would signal the Cardinals' desire to maintain the Vatican's current course, spiritually firm and politically prudent. However, these virtues also raise concerns. His quiet style and administrative approach might not inspire the fervor of the faithful as a more charismatic figure might. To some, he appears more as a strategist than a pastor, more steady hand than a prophetic voice. The Cardinals will have to consider, will he be the one to revitalize the future of the Church or merely a guardian of its present? These doubts will be prominent during the voting process, involving not just an evaluation of credentials, but also a discernment of the courage, spiritual depth, and direction the Church needs. Imagine a leader who doesn't seek the spotlight, who prefers to speak softly rather than raise his voice, who maintains composure in the storm. That's Cardinal Pietro Parolin, second on the list. In a world craving gestures, noise, and abrupt changes, he proposes another form of leadership, serene, firm, and rooted in tradition. Born in northern Italy, he grew up immersed in Catholic life and rose through diplomatic merit, intelligence, and a remarkable ability to keep the Church's mission on course even amid uncertainty. If the Church were a kingdom in crisis, Parolin would be the discreet counselor guiding with wisdom rather than with a sword. One of the most discussed episodes of his career occurred in 2018 when he participated in the Vatican's agreement with China. Some applauded it as a pragmatic action that ensured the Catholic presence in a closed environment, while others criticized it for being ambiguous and too accommodating to the Chinese regime. Despite reports of excessive closeness to Beijing, Parolin, faithful to his serene vocation, remained firm, focused, and convinced. He presented this decision as part of a long-term strategy to protect Catholic communities in regions where public faith is restricted. His name is mentioned today in the halls of the conclave, not in big headlines, but in careful conversations. As one Vatican insider noted, he is the consensus candidate, acceptable to all sensibilities. He is not so reformist as to alarm conservative sectors, nor so rigid as to hinder necessary changes. Cardinal Parolin advances cautiously, balancing reform and tradition like a tightrope walker beneath the eternal sky of Rome. But will that be enough? Some argue that, despite his political talent and deep institutional knowledge, he lacks the charisma necessary to ignite the universal soul of the Church. They worry he is more of a skilled manager than a prophet with spiritual urgency. Will the Cardinals opt for his stable leadership, or will a bolder, more inspiring voice prevail? Number 1. Cardinal Christoph Schonborn, the philosopher pastor. At the top of the list is Cardinal Christoph Schonborn, Archbishop of Vienna, who at 80 is widely respected in theological and church leadership circles, although he rarely makes headlines. If the Church is looking for a pope who combines intellectual depth with genuine pastoral sensitivity, someone capable of uniting rigorous thought with compassionate care, Schonborn could be that man. Cardinal Christoph Schonborn, coming from a noble Austrian family, chose to leave behind privileges to embrace a life of study, contemplation, and simple devotion. He joined the Dominican order, was ordained a priest, and soon emerged as one of the Church's most influential theologians. His academic career is impressive, having played a fundamental role in drafting the Catechism of the Catholic Church during the pontificate of John Paul II. As a disciple of Joseph Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict XVI, he became one of his closest intellectual collaborators. Schonborn's relevance extends beyond the realm of ideas. His pastoral life has been marked by profound authenticity, advocating for a more welcoming church, especially for people in irregular marital situations and often forgotten communities. At the same time, he has firmly upheld the fundamental teachings of the Church without compromising essential principles. This balance has earned him respect from both supporters of Pope Francis's reforms and those faithful to the legacy of Benedict XVI. In a church often strained between cultural demands and fidelity to age-old doctrine, Schonborn represents a figure of equilibrium. Imagine a pope who speaks with the wisdom of a thinker but comforts with the closeness of a parish priest. A leader who doesn't respond with cliches, but with discernment, a shepherd for those who suffer, and a beacon for those who seek the truth. However, at 80 years old, an age at which many cardinals retire, Schonborn's health has faced challenges. If elected, his pontificate would likely be short but capable, providing stability at a crucial stage and paving the way for a future successor. Those intervening years could be decisive in a world shaken by uncertainty, polarization, and spiritual isolation. Cardinal Christoph Schonborn could embody the voice the Church needs, a voice not swayed by extremes or impulsive reactions, but firm, rooted, and full of grace. Imagine the scene. White smoke rises over the Vatican. The expectant murmur of the crowd ceases, and from behind the Sistine Chapel doors emerges not a man thirsty for power, but someone devoted to peace with a serene gaze and gentle smile. He greets the faithful with quiet dignity, saying much more than words could convey. To many, he appears not as a politician or ruler, but as a father figure, a guide, carrying the deep scars and sacred strength of the Church. Will the conclave choose this experienced scholar, a bridge between the Church's long history and its uncertain future, or will it favor a younger, more energetic voice promising reforms? The decision is near. Although Scunborn, at 80, is no longer eligible to vote according to canon law, his name resonates in the Vatican's halls. His voice still carries weight, his thoughts shape dialogue, and his legacy remains like a soft mist that never dissipates. He may not have a vote, but his presence is tangible in conversations, memories, and silent hopes. A man of profound contrasts, Scunborn has steadfastly defended the Church's perennial teachings while also showing openness to legal recognition of same-sex civil unions, a stance that has both challenged and uplifted many. Some see it as a contradiction, others as the heart of a true shepherd, walking the fine line between unwavering truth and compassionate mercy, without betraying either. Like a tightrope walker dressed in red, a misstep could offend tradition, an overcorrection could extinguish tenderness. Yet he has walked that path with poise and grace, earning respect across the theological spectrum. His potential election goes beyond the outcome. It reflects a church honoring its foundations, yet feeling the call of an uncertain tomorrow. At a crossroads between history and change, doctrine and dialogue, sacred mystery and the need for understanding, Scunborn's body may appear fragile, but his spirit remains steadfast, strengthened by decades of study, enriched by a lifetime of service, and sensitive to divine grace. Imagine the curtains on St. Peter's Square opening again, the sky overcast, the crowd restrained, and then an elderly figure steps forward. Cardinal Christoph Scunborn, though not bold or strident, embodies approachability, reliability, and constancy. He blesses with a quiet stillness that commands attention, not through spectacle, but through presence. In the silence that follows his gesture, the world might see not just a potential new pope, but a wise elder reminding the Church of her essence. Described by a fellow cardinal as our last Renaissance man, Scunborn blends reason with imagination, authority with humility, and wisdom with warmth. Leaders like him, who unite these qualities without causing division or scandal, are rare. Whether or not he dons the white cassock, his influence will be felt in the conclave, not necessarily as the next pontiff, but as a benchmark against which others are measured. His name, though perhaps not on the ballot, will be whispered with respect. In a world yearning for leadership that listens more than it speaks, Scunborn's quiet influence could resonate powerfully. As familiar names fade into respectful silence and steadfast candidacies are discussed behind closed doors, the world focuses on the approaching moment, the conclave. To outsiders, it may seem like a gathering of elders in ornate robes, but to those who understand its significance, it is a spiritual surrender. It is a sacred pause in history, where the heartbeat of the Catholic Church echoes in whispered prayers and the hopes of believers worldwide. If all meet the requirements, 120 cardinal electors will enter the Sistine Chapel. Some will carry clear convictions. Others will wrestle with dilemmas of loyalty, prudence, and the gentle prompting of the Holy Spirit. Their task is not resolved through logic or politics. They are not choosing an executive or appointing a symbolic figure. They're discerning God's will for the spiritual shepherd of over 1 billion souls. Inside those consecrated walls, something profound unfolds, a reverent silence, a sacred weight, a solemn responsibility. Beneath Michelangelo's fresco of the Last Judgment, each cardinal takes an oath of confidentiality. No phones, no outside messages, only prayer, contemplation, and vows. And in the smoke, black for no decision, white for a new pope. This simple sign rises above Rome, drawing global attention to St. Peter's Basilica's chimney. Beyond the symbolism, a question lingers. What kind of pope is needed today? In a world divided by conflict, within nations and homes, communities, and even the church, some yearn for a return to sound doctrine and moral clarity. Others seek a church that listens and accompanies the suffering, reaching out to those who feel forgotten. There is no flawless choice, only men carrying wounds and wisdom, limitations and grace. In this contrast lies the living soul of the church, ancient yet present, wounded but luminous, broken yet enduring. This is the church that has withstood tyrants, divisions, revolutions, and renewals. The church where saints and sinners have shared pews, burying popes and elevating saints. It is this holy and human church preparing to write a new chapter. The cardinals will choose a pastor or prophet, a reformer or restorer, a figure of symbolic gestures, or a firm voice of doctrine. The deeper question is whether they will have ears to hear. The heart of the conclave is not about strategizing, but about silence, not political, but sacred. In this quiet, ambition dissolves, and true discernment begins. Some view the conclave as a perfumed political stage, with incense and solemn songs. Others see it as a miracle, a gathering of fragile beings that somehow channels divine guidance. Perhaps the truth lies in the space between, a meeting marked by human limits and heavenly grace. The next pope, whoever he may be, will inherit a church navigating the tension between ancient traditions and emerging realities. He will be scrutinized by a world more inclined to criticize than understand, with his words dissected and actions analyzed. He will face internal tensions, balancing those who desire change with those who hold fast to tradition. His challenges will include confronting scandal with truth, addressing migration with compassion, engaging the secular world with courage, and connecting with new generations with relevance. Beyond the cameras and headlines, his calling remains the same as Peter's: feed my sheep. This is not about entertainment or pleasing others, but about guiding, strengthening, and protecting the flock. It's a lonely path, understood by few and embraced by even fewer. As the world speculates and debates, the true journey begins in silence, in the depths of hearts across nations and generations. Prayers rise silently, carried by the trembling hands of the elderly clutching their rosaries, by the discreet tears of mothers, widows, prisoners, and priests. In these sacred moments, the Holy Spirit moves gently. The church is not built on human strategies or conveniences. Its foundation rests on Peter's courageous confession of faith. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. This statement is the bedrock upon which everything else stands. Soon, a new man will be called to occupy that place, not as a symbol of power, but as a humble servant dressed in white. His guide will be love, not imposition. He will seek no honor for himself, but will give all glory to the only one worthy of praise. As the bells ring in the streets of Rome and the cardinals gather beneath majestic vaults, we are invited to pray, not for power, but for discernment, not for victory, but for truth. Let us pray for a pope who responds not to human expectations, but to an authentic call from God. May he embody the courage of Peter, the tenderness of Francis, the wisdom of Benedict, and above all, the humility of Christ himself. The world waits, the church sighs, the spirit stirs, and from the silence, a man will emerge. Speaking of the next pope is not merely discussing an ecclesiastical figure. It is reflecting on the soul of a global family yearning for direction and meaning. The chosen one will not simply inherit a title, but will assume a sacred mission, carrying the prayers, fears, and hopes of more than 1 billion faithful across the globe. This is not a common leadership change. It is a holy transition. Whoever is chosen must not only be capable, but truly called. The weight of this task is not measured in ornaments or riches, but in the silent and profound burden that only the bearer can feel. To step onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and declare Habemus Papam is to embrace not only the Church's history, but also its fragile and ever-changing future. Who will he be? Perhaps a young man chosen for his ability to revitalize the Church's mission, reach new generations, and restore vigor to an authentically lived faith. A younger pope could transform the Church's approach from discussion to relationship, inviting people not only to follow doctrines, but to personally encounter Christ. Or perhaps he will be an older man with the maturity to offer wisdom, serenity, and steadfastness in unstable times. In him, the Church would find a clear compass and a faithful companion across generations, integrating change while respecting what has sustained the Church through centuries. He might come from Europe, with its deeply rooted Catholic legacy in art, thought, and ecclesiastical tradition, bringing intellectual depth and institutional knowledge. Or he could emerge from the global South, Africa, Latin America, or Asia, regions where the Church flourishes with strength and vitality, embodying the beating heart of Catholicism today. Perhaps he is an intellectual like Benedict XVI, trained in contemplation and theological study. Or perhaps a pastor like John Paul II, chosen for his compassion, closeness to the poor, and desire to walk alongside the people. The next pope's identity and origin remain uncertain, but his role is clear: to lead with faith, hope, and love, guiding the Church into its next chapter with humility and grace. Above all, the next pope must be a man of prayer. No charisma, diplomatic skill, or institutional vision can replace the essential requirement of a life in communion with God. The Church doesn't need a celebrity or an administrator. It needs a man who knows how to kneel. In a divided world, the next pope must be a bridge builder, not as a symbol of concession, but as a craftsman of reconciliation. He must hold the truth firmly yet gently, extending mercy clearly and decisively. He will need to face the wounds of abuse with unwavering justice and courage, speaking to the hearts of faithful Catholics who feel disoriented in a rapidly changing world. He must find ways to reach young people, many of whom are immersed in technology but distant from a deep spiritual life. His mission will be to reintroduce Jesus Christ to a culture that has forgotten how to seek him, and this will not be an easy task. Today, the Church faces both internal and external pressures. Internally, tensions persist between those who fear change and those who see it as necessary. Externally, the Church contends with secularism, social skepticism, constant media criticism, and frequent misunderstandings about its role. The next pope will have to navigate these conflicting expectations, some noble, others unrealistic, while remaining steadfast. He must walk in the spirit of Peter, the apostle who dared to tread water and began to sink when he took his eyes off Christ. Like Peter, the new pope will need to move forward with unwavering faith, keeping his focus not on applause or popular approval, but solely on Jesus. Leadership will be essential in his role. Each pope leaves a different mark. John Paul II connected with the world through his energy and travels. Benedict XVI offered theological depth and serene authority. Francis has brought the Church closer to the streets, embracing humility and supporting the poor. The next pope will bring his own character, as he should. These times demand a renewed voice capable of responding to today's wounds, whether through dialogue, reform, or spiritual renewal. Although the cardinals will cast their votes guided by tradition, the Holy Spirit is not limited by age, nationality, or human interests. History has shown that the chosen one is often a surprise. Consider Karol Wojtyla, the almost unknown Polish cardinal who became St. John Paul II, or Joseph Ratzinger, who longed for a quiet retirement and ended up as Benedict XVI, or Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who took the name Francis and transformed the face of the papacy for a new generation. Perhaps the man who will wear that mantle now is already praying in a small chapel, walking among the forgotten, or living his daily life, unaware that he could soon be called to lead the world's oldest institution. Whether his pontificate is short or long, remembered for bold reforms or prudent guidance, his mission will always be the same: to remind the Church of who she is and to reflect Christ not only in words, but also in actions. The greatest popes always understood this. They were above all servants, servants of the gospel, servants of unity, servants of souls. Soon, the white smoke will rise, the bells will ring, a name will be called, and a new chapter will begin. The doors of the Sistine Chapel will close. Outside, the world will hold its breath beneath the majestic statues and colonnades of St. Peter's Square under the immense sky of Rome. Journalists will speculate, pilgrims will pray, some will name names aloud, others will wait silently in hope. Inside, the cardinals will pray in recollection, depositing their votes with trembling hands, aware that this moment transcends their own lives. While the world remains silent and expectant, the eternal rhythm of the Church continues. The black smoke will rise again and again, marking the wait. But then, at the appointed moment, the white smoke will appear, rising gently as a serene but unmistakable signal. The decision will be made. A new pope will have been elected. The bells will ring. The crowd will gather. All eyes will be on the balcony. The curtains will close and then slowly open. Silence will prevail, and he will appear, not as a celebrity or a head of state, but as a servant, a man dressed in white, bearing centuries of tradition and the silent prayers of millions. Your life will change forever. He will speak for the first time, perhaps smiling, perhaps with tears, perhaps moved, but always with the solemn awareness that he is now walking in Peter's footsteps. Peter, the one who doubted and was forgiven. Peter, the one who was afraid and then stood firm. And whatever your origin, from Rome or Rio, from Manila or Kinshasa, from Buenos Aires or Budapest, your voice will become the voice of the universal Church. For some, it will be hope, for others uncertainty, but for all, it will symbolize continuity. Once again, the Church turns to the deep roots of its sacred tradition, electing a new shepherd, not to impose his power, but to guide with compassion. And before he utters a word, his first gesture will be a blessing. Because if there's one thing the world needs right now, it's to be blessed. Blessing to those who suffer, to those who are weary, to those who are divided, to those who doubt, to those who hope, and to those who still seek. A silent sign that despite the noise and confusion of modern life, something eternal remains, a faith that does not waver. From that first moment, the weight of responsibility will begin to grow. The new pope will face both internal and external challenges. He will be the target of criticism, often misunderstood, and the expectations placed on him will be more than any human being could bear. But he will also be sustained by the prayer of the faithful, silent, invisible, but full of power. And in the stillness of each night, when he bows his head in prayer, he will remember that his mission is not to please the world, but to follow Christ, to be a visible reflection of an invisible shepherd, a father to the forgotten, a light to those who have lost their way, a firm pillar for a church that has weathered storm after storm and is still standing, because this is the truth that sustains everything. The church has endured through centuries of upheaval, stages, renewal, times of persecution, and moments of glory. It has persevered not because of blameless men, but because of a perfect Savior. And it will continue steadfast, not thanks to skillful strategies or eloquent speeches, but because of the solidity of faith. The new pope will not come to save the church. He will not be able to heal all the wounds or solve all the problems. But if he prays sincerely, listens humbly, and loves with all his heart, he will lead her faithfully. He will not be remembered for his decisions or his popularity, but for having stood firm in the truth. And one day his pontificate will also come to an end. He will be buried like so many before him, one more link in the unbreakable chain of faith that spans generations. Another chapter in a story that has survived empires and its own dark nights. And once again the bells will ring and the world will stop, because the church continues, not because of the one who leads it, but because of the one who founded it, Christ. Let the white smoke rise, let a name be announced, and let a new era begin. May the new pope, whoever he may be and wherever he comes from, be a man of courage, tenderness, and profound faith, who walks with humility, leads with courage, and loves with all his being. Because in the end, what defines a pope's legacy is not how many chanted his name, nor how far his voice reached. It is the mark of his cross. And now, as the entire world unites in prayer and contemplation, we remember Francis with grateful souls and tears in our eyes. A pastor who walked alongside the poor, who spoke gently to the forgotten, and who carried the burdens of the church with a heart full of mercy. He did not seek applause, but gave his life in silent service. His words were not just homilies. They were comfort for the wounded, light for the seekers, and encouragement for the weary. Although his voice has faded, his compassion still resonates in every soul he touched. He has returned to the arms of the Lord whom he served so faithfully, leaving a legacy not written in gold, but engraved in the hearts of millions. His cross was heavy, but he carried it with dignity. Your path has come to an end. If this message has touched your heart, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Let us honor his life by walking in faith. Subscribe to our channel to stay connected with stories of hope, prayer, and legacy. And above all, let us continue to pray for the church, for the new pope, and for the soul of Pope Francis. May he rest in the peace he preached so often.